Thank you to the moderator and to the Office of the Town Manager for providing this forum to address town meeting members. By a vote of 5-3, the Finance Committee recommends adoption of Article 21 to appropriate $19,400,000 for the renovation of the EMERY GROVER building and for limited renovations of the Hillside School for temporary use by the school department during the EMERY GROVER renovations. Since the funding proposed in the warrant was first presented to the Finance Committee on April 6th, the Finance Committee has had multiple discussions regarding the funding sources and recommends by a vote of 6-2 that town meeting adopt Mr. Riley's motion to amend Article 21 by increasing the borrowing authorization by $4,500,000 and by decreasing the appropriation from free cash by the same amount. I will first summarize the background of this article and the potential need for a supplemental appropriation in the fall. I will then summarize the rationale for the recommendation that town meeting amend the funding sources under Article 21. As a reminder for re-elected town meeting members, and as a summary for newly elected town meeting members, this past October, town meeting considered and approved design funding for the EMERY GROVER renovation. At the time, the Finance Committee supported the temporary relocation of the school department to Hillside while expressing concerns about prioritizing the EMERY GROVER project ahead of having a plan on how to fund the Mitchell, Pollard, and DPW building projects within established debt limits. Nevertheless, town meeting voted to approve design funding for EMERY GROVER. The Finance Committee places great weight on the actions of town meeting, and it is on this basis of town meeting's vote in October that the Finance Committee recommends adoption of Article 21. To be clear, financing of the renovation of EMERY GROVER does fall within established debt limits under either the funding proposed by the main motion or under the funding proposed by the motion to amend. However, the concerns expressed by the Finance Committee in October regarding the financing of all identified capital projects, including Mitchell, Pollard, and the DPW complex, remain unresolved. It is important to note that the appropriation in Article 21 of $19,400,000 is still an estimate of the total cost of the EMERY GROVER renovation. In late March, the Finance Committee was informed that based upon two cost estimates and a desire expressed by the Permanent Public Building Committee to include a 20% contingency allowance, the total costs may actually be higher. The current estimate of this overage is $2 million, but the total cost will not be known until bids are in hand in the fall. Driving this uncertainty in costs are rising inflation, ongoing supply chain disruptions, and variability in the initial cost estimates. In consultation with members of the Select Board, Permanent Public Building Committee, Community Preservation Committee, and School Committee, the Finance Committee recommends approving the $19,400,000 at this time in the hopes of enticing bidders in the fall. If received bids exceed the $19.4 million, then a request for an additional appropriation may come before town meeting in the fall. But it is also possible that no appropriation will be required. In any event, the Finance Committee would assess any additional request for appropriations at that time. Due to the continued uncertainty of the total costs of the EMERY GROVER project and there being several other identified capital needs in town, the Finance Committee believes that it is most prudent to spread out costs over time in a regular and predictable manner, rather than funding nearly 1/4 of the project upfront with free cash. This is justified because the benefits of the renovated EMERY GROVER building will be distributed across multiple decades of the building's life. It is reasonable that if future residents are to share in the benefits of the building, then they can be expected to share in a portion of the costs. The liquidity and flexibility afforded by free cash should be retained until costs for this and other identified capital needs are better understood. The Finance Committee recommends adoption of Article 21 and Mr. Riley's motion to amend.